Goodman. I'm the director of Carroll County Mental Health Advocates. My partner is right here.
My name is Bethany Dahl. I'm the executive director of the Child Advocacy Center.
We also have with us Juvenile Court Judge Tom Carver. And he is part of why we're having this conversation today. Several months back, myself and Judge Edie Haney, I don't know if Judge Haney's here, I haven't seen her, but we were approached by Kim Jones with the Community Foundation, by a foundation out of Atlanta that talked about youth mental health in Carroll County. And so we had that conversation, and we realized that we do have a lot of services in regards to youth mental health, but we just don't have a lot of coordination of services. We had that conversation with Judge Farmer. We talked about what we needed to do in that aspect. Here we are. We thought having a state board meeting would sort of be the best idea. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Judge?
Jody, I would like to thank you, Bethany, for holding this. I think it is important. I agree, we have a great deal of services, just the people in this room and the different organizations that they represent shows that. The concerning thing to me, and I think everybody in this room probably, is a view of an increase in mental health issues for children, but I don't believe it's really an increase as much as an increased awareness of all of us that is an ongoing problem that we need to address. And as life frankly gets more complicated, I think the impact we see and the behaviors we see get to be more acute. And so we in a court system see more of them because just the level that those behaviors get to. And I appreciate very much the meeting and the thought of coordinating services because, again, and it's preaching to the choir, to all of you, but I know each of you probably many times are frustrated that when you work and you put all of your effort into working on a problem, then your involvement ends or your involvement is cut short for different reasons, and there's no continuity of services of what you worked on and what you were addressing that goes to the next step. And one of the most frustrating things to me is when I see then the impact of that, well, they did this a year ago, and they did this 6 months ago, and they did this 3 months ago. And all of them were very good steps, but because there was no continuity to them, then the progress that was made, one step forward, 2 steps back, and then somebody else steps in and helps them out, and they're set back. And then all the issues on top of that, of economics and transportation and family participation are all going to be a problem. So I welcome very much a discussion of what our acute needs are, how we can address those, and then coordination between all of these service providers and all of these interested parties so that we know what everybody else is doing and can pool our resources to try and have, as I said, continuity of services. So thank you all very much. This is something we've been needing, and I appreciate it very much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we didn't know how many people to expect, obviously. We were hoping for 20. We surpassed that goal. So obviously I think this just speaks to the volume of the need and the importance of the conversation because you all are here. So we really didn't know what to expect. So we're playing it by ear. We're going to pass out some case studies. Our original goal was to have everybody kind of shift around, but we're not going to do that. We're going to stay where you're at, just for social distancing, safety purposes. So Bethany's going to pass around case studies. Our idea is that you read your case study, you formulate a plan of action for your individual, and look at the resources services that we have in our county, identify any potential barriers, and then identify any gaps in services that we have. Our original goal was to have a representative from each area at each table, but that didn't work out. So we're going to go with what we have. Talk amongst yourselves. You don't have all the information. We get it. Go with what you have. And let's see what we come up with.
Okay. So we had Trees Flowers with Morehouse School of Medicine. We have Gila Gonzalez with Family Connections, Lisa Merrill with CMHA, and I've already told you who I am. Hi, I'm Mandy. We had a school referral. Teacher is concerned about a female high school student. She was doing all the things. She was in everything. She was leading a great life. And then all of a sudden she was just withdrawn, had multiple days missed out of school, and her grades dropped. So we said that we would notify the school counselor and follow up with that school counselor to make sure that, they are on it. Services, resources available in Carroll County. We said that we would contact the Child Advocacy Center, possibly law enforcement, depending on what was happening with this particular student, and mental health services such as Willowbrook and Pathways. Possible barriers to treatment, services, resources, lack of family communication due to stigma or denial. This isn't happening, my child is fine, leave us alone. And language barriers, because we definitely have an issue where we're not multilingual in this community. Not all of us anyway. Me right here, I'm not multilingual. I try though. I try. And then gaps in services, missing resources. That's when we were at a limited time crunch. But the very first thing we all said was transportation.
This is Jennifer Jindrick from First Baptist Carrollton, Jalea Brown from the Child Advocacy Center, Kaylee Callahan, also from the Child Advocacy Center, and Christopher Simonton, also from First Baptist Church. We have the same case study, but we went into possibilities at length. So we weren't sure what she had or what exactly the problem was, so we kind of had a broad approach. Our plan of action was reach out to the counselor, to the SRO, to her parents, and then if we could find her friend group and contact them and see if there was anything that had happened or she'd gotten into anything. Available resources was SRO, tutor, and then therapy as well. Possible barriers were either sickness, whether that's COVID or something else, or she was a runaway, or parents something. And we just said gaps in resources would be a Boys and Girls Club, a YMCA, or a youth mentor program. Then the rest overlapped with their diagnosis.
Daniel from Temple High School, Cameron Mount from the Carrollton City Schools. We have Allison Chambers from Bowden Baptist and Norma Rothschild. Did I get that?
That's close enough.
From the Catholic Center at UWG. Our case was officers responding to a call about a 13-year-old male adolescent screaming, locked in a room, refusing to come out, refusing to go to school, and only wants to play video games. So part of this is calling the school, seeing if they're an attendance problem, possible CHINS referral to juvenile court, possible social worker referral to get somebody out to the house, possibly SRO. Seeing if they can get them to school about school counseling, or putting the school counselor on the phone with the kid to see if there's some reason they don't want to go to school. If it keeps going, we talked about doing a Willowbrook assessment, or doing trying to set them up with school counseling or regular counseling out in the community. We also talked about PASS in the community and getting them set up with our PASS person at school. So our services are PASS, CHINS, counseling, Phoenix, possibly, those kind of resources. Barriers would be possibly insurance, the availability of services and the timelines for that, potentially transportation. If they get counseling, can they get there? Family knowledge of services and or the willingness to get services, because sometimes the parents that just don't want to help the kid. And then the gaps are continuity of services. A lot of our places that are free or reduced have too high of a turnover to keep that consistent, and that makes the quality suffer. Potential transiences and families, we lose track of where they are, and so we can't continue to help them if they move. Quantity and quality of low cost or free services, and the communication between agencies.
Yeah, which I think is why we're here. Thank you guys.
Carrollton City Schools, and we have Stephanie Tolis, who is a parent, foster parent, and with Cultivating You. We have Elena Lyle, who is an intern with Carrollton City Schools and social work, and we have Brittany Berry, who works for DFACS and is also a school social worker intern. And we just felt like we really didn't have enough information because this could go several different ways. And we didn't have a law enforcement person at our table, so we were trying to figure out what law enforcement really would do. And we thought, well, first of all, they need to find out a little more background information on this child and what caused this to happen. And then maybe law enforcement could maybe talk to the child to get them to de-escalate. But then moving forward, that maybe advising the parent to file unruly charges with and making a CHINS referral, and then that way the school could be involved, DJJ could be involved. We would have several different therapy, like Willowbrook or Phoenix, or there's so many out there, well, not a ton, but there's more than there used to be, who could actually help us make a plan for the family and the student moving forward. If the child became violent, we also talked about having to possibly call DFACS at that time, because maybe if it's on a weekend, an SRO is not going to be available, a social worker from the school is not going to be available, and so DFACS may have to be contacted. We had similar situations like they had as some services or resources available would be CHINS, DJJ, DFACS, Willowbrook, barriers, no insurance, no transportation, parents' willingness to follow through, and then gaps in services, maybe parent and child not making their appointments once therapy was set up.
Intern at the Child Advocacy Center. We have Brandolyn from the Housing Authority, Joel from the CPD, and Jacqueline Bridges, council member. Our case study was a staff member working with a single mom is told that daughter constantly complains of stomach ache, headache, feeling sick, but pediatrician can't find anything wrong. Mother suspects possible sexual abuse. So we went with that. We want some more information. Obviously, mom has a hunch something's going on, so notify DFACS, and then that's going to kind of trigger the rest. May then leads to law enforcement, notify the CAC for a forensic interview. Services and resources in Carroll County, of course, the CAC for this. DFACS, police, sheriff's department, the school system, Tanner, Willowbrook for possible therapy after. Possible barriers could be an uncooperative parent or guardian, and also could be transportation in the future. I know somebody else mentioned continuity of services running out if they need further services, so that transportation, gaps in services, medical examination. The group felt processing in-house rather than having to go elsewhere would streamline the process. And children's groups for victims of sexual abuse, something to continue that aftercare.
Carroll County Schools, and I've got Donna Simpson, Jeremy Shane, and Caroline Allen, and they are also with Carroll County Schools. They're counselors, and I am the homeless liaison and foster care contact. And again, some of our questions were the same, is why does mom suspect sexual abuse? Is it something that happened to mom and she's projecting on the child, or is it something that has happened with the child that mom suspects? A lot of the things that were said are the same things we came up with. The plan of action is to reach out to the school and see what the school comes up with and what they know and what they've heard. And then also look at counseling resources, whether it's school counseling, counseling outside, or counseling coming into the school like Willowbrook. And at some point, is there a forensic interview that's needed, child advocacy referrals, DFACS referrals. Some of the sources was, of course, school and school-based interventions, child advocacy, DFACS, and counseling with outside agencies. Limitations, we kind of went a different way, and looked at this specific group, but also looked at limitations that we see in general. And transportation is a big one for a lot of these families. Insurance is one, that for them to get some of the supports that they need. We also kind of stepped into one of the things that we see that is a limitation is cultural and language, that we feel like we don't have a lot of support. While that was not said specifically about this student, if this student had have been a non-English speaker or English as a second language, or the parents were limited with English, then we've got a whole different area that we've got concerns with. And then of course technology, since a lot of counseling services are doing the telemental with the COVID. Do they even have the technology resources at home that they're able to use, and do they have the skills to use it? Well, we know that a lot of the kids do, the parents may not. And is there a poverty and housing situation that's may need to come into play, and a fear of the mother of having the child referred to DFACS? So the gaps that we came up with again is the multilingual counseling and resources, and the transportation, internet, and insurance were some of our biggest ones.
In regards to a parent who is concerned about a 14-year-old daughter who is smoking, drinking with her older friends, engaging in sexual activities. And the parent has spoken with a youth pastor about her concerns. So before I start, I need to introduce you all. We are at the table. So I'm Hanny Yates. I'm the pastor and advocate at Bowden Mountain High School. This is Melissa Wilkinson. She's the counselor at Bowden High School. This is Ryan Scroggin. He is the counselor at the upper elementary at Carrollton. And this is Kristen Cochran, who is the past advocate at Carrollton High School. So we're all in the school, so we kind of went at this with that direction, as this is one of our students. So our plan of action was to meet with the girl, to meet with the student, to build rapport, question about these concerns that her mother has brought, then also meet and speak with the parent to discuss these concerns. Then we would like to have the parent and child together, bring them both to the table to determine the next course of action. And also we had put to touch base with a youth pastor as well about resources that he might have already suggested to the parent. Some of the services and resources available in Carroll County, we put, of course, in-school resources, so the counselor, social worker, past advocate, nurse possibly. We put mental health resources, the counseling services that are in the community, so that would be Willowbrook, Phoenix, Pathways, any type of mentoring program, so SPARK or Teens on the Ground, things like that we have. Sounds like she needs some mentorship. Also law enforcement, juvenile justice resources, other court diversion programs, churches, since she already is, their family is in the church and has reached out to the pastor, youth pastor. Possible barriers to treatment, we put family. A lot of times we see that the family is a barrier lots of times. The student possibly their own personal moral beliefs, that kind of, we tie that in due to the pastor, the youth pastor. Financial, insurance of course, transportation, age is a huge one. Since she is only 14 years old, there are lots of, which kind of leaves the next thing, gaps in resources for teens who have addictions, who have substance abuse. Which leads us to the next gaps in services. Also, homeless services for teens. I know she's underage, but that is a gap in services I see with high school students. And then specialized treatment again for teens who have substance abuse.
At our table, we have Jason Seidel with Carrollton City Schools, Rachel Edwards with DFACS, and then Sierra coming with DFACS as well. And we technically did the same kind of approach with this case. Was we looked at school resources and community resources. So our plan of action centered around the parent contacting the school to see if the school counselor could help kind of involve the child in extracurricular activities, what after school programs there were. We also talked about medical concerns, so making sure the child saw a doctor. Exploring the supervision issue, like what the parent's work schedule is, because sometimes that's a barrier if they work long hours. And then addressing the issue with the child directly, and if the parent doesn't have a good relationship with that child, finding someone that the child trusts that can help that conversation as well. And the resources that we kind of identified were the school with the extracurricular activities, the youth pastor, the groups that they have at church if that's already involved, and exploring therapy with the child. And the barriers that we found were the parent's work schedule and stigma, peer pressure, the child's willingness to receive services, and then financial struggles. And the biggest gap in services that we talked about was transportation.
I'm Lee Washington. I'm with DJJ. At my table is the Judge Tom Palmer, Linda Blanchard, Carroll County Juvenile Court. She is the CHINS coordinator. Jesse Williams, he's the Wellness Court coordinator. And Jody threw me a curveball, gave me a 10-year-old. That's kind of my realm. Just saying. But my case study, our case study was a 10-year-old female child who was sleeping a lot, frequent nightmares, cutting herself, and she was brought in for a mental health assessment by the family. The plan of action is she needs a full Tanner assessment to see what's going on with this child, possibly a CAC interview. Some of these actions could be from the trauma from sexual abuse. She needs a full trauma assessment. We have lots of resources in Carroll County. We have Tanner, we have CAC, we have Phoenix. We have several counselors and individual practice that do really well with younger children. Possible barriers we saw, the biggest thing is her age. She's 10. Parental involvement, that's an issue with us a lot. Insurance, transportation. Some of the gaps in services that we saw were mentoring, the availability of psychiatric services for children so young. And some of these parents just don't know how to parent, especially kids with issues. So we need more of that available for our kids.
Sandra Morris, who's got all kinds of things listed. Carroll County Board of Education, we'll go with that one. Daniel Roll with Carroll County Schools and Luke Brown with West Georgia Regional Library. We had the same scenario, the 10-year-old. The three main things that we talked about for plan of action was to notify law enforcement for an investigation to see if the reason she's having nightmares is because something has happened to her. And obviously notifying DFACS, and then talking to school counselors to see if there's any change in her history or change in her behavior. I guess the main resource that we said that hasn't been said so far is the health department and what they might be able to provide the family as far as, things like Medicare and Medicaid and stuff like that to help put some of these resources in place. And also their family doctor, if they have a history with a basic family doctor. The two big barriers that haven't been mentioned that we talked about is the kid's willingness. You can put the resources out there, but if the kid's not willing to talk to anybody, like talking to CAC, you're not gonna get anywhere with them. And the other one that we talked about is that people involved in this incident have a distrust in the process or the system or certain people that we might encounter because of past history, things that they've dealt with in the past that they didn't like, and so they might not be willing to use those resources again. And then the two big gaps in services that we talked about is the lack of communication and coordination, which obviously something like this will help with, and then lack of follow through by the families and by the kid. Again, you can set up those sources or those resources, but if they don't do it, it doesn't do you any good.
Just piggyback. I'm Dawn Allred, and I guess I'm with Jody, and Jenny from Park, and Stephanie from Pathways, and Carly from Rootville Elementary. We have a mother with bruises on her body and tells her physician that her 14-year-old son has anger issues. So our plan of action is for this new thing called Carroll County Youth Mental Health Task Force that the office, the medical doctor's office can call and do a warm handoff. The mother can go directly over there, talk to a specialist who can help her navigate all of these services that are already in existence. So it's just the child version of Carroll Mental Health Advocates, but the child version of that. And then also we would encourage the mother, if she's seeing a physician, that means she's probably got insurance, so she could call her insurance for a referral for family therapy, and then to contact the school counselor. I'm not going to restate all the resources in Carroll County because there are too numerous to say. We don't have a lack of resources. Possible barriers to accessing that is the lack of the knowledge by the medical community and or their willingness to get involved. So our action plan actually is a media education to doctors and physicians and making it easy for them. There's a lack of centralized referral organization. I think that's what she was talking about. There's so many services but no organized way, and it's almost like you have to be in DFACS or the court system or that you're already in trouble. There's no pretrial diversion. There's no early intervention really that gives you access to the whole menu And then, of course, all the other things, insurance funding, transportation, shame, stigma, and like you said, fear of defects or legal things, you're gonna take my kid or something, or oh my God, whatever. Gaps was limited in-home services, limited transportation, and communities' lack of awareness of the resources. But I've gotta go with the specialized services for substance use, specialized services for young children, yeah, that's what I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Willowbrook, and we have Natasha and Kim, who are also from Willowbrook, and Mr. Walt, who is a concerned citizen that just happened to get put at a table with a bunch of treatment providers.
I was here first.
We had the same case. The physician notes with the bruises on the arms and legs of the adult mother who tells them that their 14-year-old male child has anger issues. We, at no surprise, will refer both of them to for a screening at Willowbrook and strongly encourage them to follow the recommendations, with the hope that who they are connected to based on those recommendations can connect them with all of the resources in this room. We listed the same ones. I don't think we have anything that anyone else hasn't already listed in terms of resources in Carroll County. Barriers. There's a waiting list for services in so many places, no insurance, transportation, unstable housing, a high turnover rate with therapy staff, internet access, environmental norms, and generational trauma. And for gaps in services, we put community awareness of services, and then adolescent substance abuse services above ASAM level 0.5 and 0.1.
A lot of acronyms used. If you did not know what 10 of those acronyms are, that's okay. See one of us afterwards and we will make you a list. There was PASS, CAC, CHINS, DJJ, SRO, I don't know, there was a lot. I wrote some of them down. It's okay, there's a lot. It's another language. Who's missing? Look around. Again, we were gonna split you up so that there was a representative from each profession at each table, but that didn't work out. But who's missing at the table? Who's not here? I would say my first suggestion would be youth. We need to have a youth voice at the table, right? We think we know what's best for them a lot of the time, and sometimes they have some of the best ideas. So I think having a youth voice on this task force would be a great idea. But if you have ideas of who else is missing that would be a great addition to being a member of this task force, please let us know. We can talk afterwards, or just write them down and volunteer them. So out of this meeting, we want to really, while we have a captive audience, who's willing to commit to joining and creating a youth mental health task force for Carroll County? We have your attention. You guys obviously see that there's a need, or you wouldn't have shown up. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a volunteer and I'm asking a question. Already now, like 3 or 4 things developed that could just do this. Like, what about family connections? I mean, everybody in this room said it's family connections. Why do you need to recreate another wheel?
Well,
I don't know what LIPC is called now. I don't know, you know.
For purposes of this meeting, Bethany and I talked. We are under very strict guidance from our board of directors that we cannot take on this task. My organization does not serve youth. So let me just be very clear about that. I have 5 board members in this room. CMHA cannot take this on. We can host this conversation, but we cannot be the lead organization in facilitating this youth mental health task force. We are glad to start this conversation and hand it off to someone else. But and I think I can't speak for Bethany.
I would love to say that we could take this on, because sadly there's a lot of things with youth mental health that are connected to abuse that children have, or just trauma and childhood trauma. But the size of our organization and our capacity at this moment, we cannot add this onto ours. So we obviously are very passionate about it and think kids deserve this shot. And,
Absolutely.
So we're willing to support. We wanted to get everyone together.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
Another group that's missing from this room that would be good to include is our elected officials. And connected to that idea, in certain other states, youth at the age of 14 can consent to and get their own mental health treatment, because I know one thing we run into in the school system is parents who are not willing to consent for their kids getting treatment. So like, that's a law thing. So that's beyond me as a school counselor. But that's something that we might could look at, and it's a bigger picture thing. Like, if we have a 14-year-old who knows they need mental health treatment, and parents that aren't willing, how can we empower our kids to get their own treatment?
And that's definitely a conversation that I think that this task force can take on. And, you know, a group like that can change legislation, for sure. There are no limits, but I think we have to definitely organize, our next steps and who's willing to commit to serve on that. And Dawn makes a great point. Maybe it is an already existing organization that can add to that mission. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Gila Gonzalez. I am the new coordinator for Family Connection. And as soon as I entered, which was my first day was January the 4th, I'm finding out that we have an annual plan, and that is youth mental health. And that is going to be a collaboration between all of us in our community to be able to do this. And that's when they decided to do this, I was like, I am going to be there, and I'm here, and all of us are here because we want to create that youth mental health task force that is so imperative, so we can actually get all the resources in place, what we have, and find what are the resources that we are missing, and then we are going to be able to work all together.
So maybe we have our answer, Miss Gila.
The job already had been done by Judge Palmer and all these amazing organizations that are here, which I've been part of it, but until January the 4th, I became the coordinator, so I'm working.
So obviously we're putting you all on the spot, and we would love for somebody to just volunteer and raise their hand, you know, to help Miss Gila.
I'm going to say,
Excellent.
this is my thing.
Look at all the wonderful volunteers.
She's got you. She's got face recognition.
So the next time we plan on meeting is going to be February 22nd at 2 p.m. It'll be same place, same time, just a month ahead. If you signed in on one of the sheets that was out here, I have your email address, and Lord willing, it's legible. We'll be sending out an email just with the time and the meeting invite, so you'll all get that. So if you have not heard from us in the next week, reach out to Jody or myself, and we'll make sure to get you on that list. Does anybody have any questions at the moment?
And if you foresee that someone else from your organization would be a better fit for this task force, then you can call and tell them that they are now part of this and send them the invite and just send us their information. That works too.
We fully support volunteering.
Please make sure you fill out your forms correctly. We're going to compile all of this so that we have something to work on next meeting. And thank you all for your time. We are blown away by the response. We will be in touch.
Okay, I want to know more
Thank
about
you
this.
so much.